Okay, let's make a melody. I have no clue what I want to make. I kind of had an idea to use a piano, but I don't know if I necessarily want to do that because I have done that a couple of times recently. Let me open up something new that I don't normally open up. So I don't usually use Harmor. So let's look through some presets. I do like a church bell thing. Let's start with that. I think I want to repeat this throughout, like the entire thing. So I'm just going to do this. And I'm doubling the pattern length because I've gotten some feedback recently, as well as in the past, that was essentially saying like my beats tend to switch too quickly. So like ideas change too fast. And so people don't have a chance to, grasp onto the ideas. So I'm kind of changing the way that I'm approaching how I make stuff now. I'm doubling the length of things and then keeping that in mind later on when I go to arrange. So, and I almost want to, on a separate pattern, make like a separate melody. Like I don't want it, I want to be able to separate these. That's why I'm changing this to a separate thing. Okay. Okay, and so since I'm going to double this, I'm going to go ahead and start making things slightly different or, making things a little bit more flavorful. So maybe in the second half I can add just like a little flavor note halfway through somewhere. There we go. Okay. So now I'm going to copy this over, but now I want to make this second half slightly different. So maybe in the first half we can take, maybe we could do something like this. And then we can do the same thing over here. Maybe just add like one or two notes to make it a little bit more like different. Okay, it seems like we have like a lot of mid and some low frequencies. So I'm going to go ahead and put them on the mixer channel here in just a second. And I'm going to pull up an EQ for each one just to check and see. Because I think it's just like low mids. Yeah. So we don't have anything going on up here in the high end on this one. And then on this one, I think it's even more so. Yeah. So this one is pretty much just those boom, boom, boom that repeats. So I'm going to make that separated. And then I'm also going to put some effects on it to make it like ring out. So I'm going to put some heavy delay on it. And I'm going to change the timing a little bit. And then I'm going to mix it back. So let's turn this up. Let's go with some chorus. And then I'm going to do the same thing for reverb. I'm going to like overdo the reverb, way overdo it, and then I'm going to mix it back. And I'm taking off some of the dry signal because I really want to push it back in the background. And let's add some delay on it, some extra delay while we're here, and then let's mix it back. Okay, I also want to control the dynamics a little bit, so let's add a little bit of saturation while we're here. And notice I'm not adding saturation to the one that I want pushed back, because saturation often adds like new information, and some of that information is going to be in the high end depending on what saturation you're adding and how you're adding it. So I avoided adding saturation to this one because I don't want to add high-end information to it because that may bring it forward in the mix a little bit. This one, however, I think I want to add some distortion to it and accentuate this. yeah, I'm gonna flip back and forth between A and B until I like the texture, then I'll mix it back. Okay, so I like the texture of A better than B, so now I'm gonna pull the threshold back, and then I'm gonna pull this mix knob back. I'm actually gonna put this before the EQ, so when you, in FL Studio, things get processed in order as you put them. So if I put this fruity distortion before the EQ, that means distortion is gonna happen, and then this EQ is gonna come in, and we can see that some of this distortion coming through in the top end a little bit. And I might just, cut off a little bit of it because I don't want super high-end information up here. But I do want some of this. And let's get rid of a little bit more of this subby, bassy stuff because this other one has some of this subby, bassy stuff down here. So we don't need too much more. Actually, it's not really subby, it's bassy, but you get the idea. I don't want too much low information all at the same time. So I'm going to put a limiter on this one as well. And so I could go a bunch of different directions at this point. The second thing, I could go like kind of dark and gritty, because these already don't have too much high information aside from that distortion that I added. So I think I'm going to continue with this and kind of keep things dark and creepy and eerie and on the slower side, maybe. I'm not sure yet. I say that. Let me see if I can find a sound that I can get kind of repetitive with. So maybe this may not be the right sound, but I just want to get a pattern down. So maybe do something like this. And I know this synth has quite a bit of high information in it, but like I said, I might EQ this out later if I continue with this like darker, grittier idea. Let me change this up ever so slightly. So I'm going to move these here, and then we'll move these, I guess, up here. And then we can slightly change the second half of this. Say slightly. It may be completely different. I'm not sure yet. But let's try moving it up here. And these are not in key anymore. So let's move them, I guess, here. I'll just try this and see how it sounds. I'm not really a fan of this pattern quite as much. Let's repeat it. Then I think for this one, I'm not going to change the second half of this because it's already kind of, it changes quite often, so I think we're okay keeping this the same. Okay, so now let's make it match the aesthetic that we want. So I have the pattern and like the texture that I want. So the first thing I'm going to do is take off the high end and the low end. So we're going to just do this right here and shelf down this high end. Okay, and then we're going to push it in the background a little bit, so I'm going to put some delay on it, and I'm going to do something similar I did with the others, and I'm going to do a little bit too much with this, and then I'll back it off. Okay, now I want to try gross speed on this, because I bet I could make something that sounds like scratchy, that sounds cool. So I don't use these presets in gross speed enough. I need to. Well, I bet this would sound cool if I just mixed this out 50%. Let me try another gross speed preset, and I'm gonna a turntable. I think this is what I was looking for originally. Yeah. Okay, and with the two bells, I'm gonna go through and like randomize the timings. I think for this one, I'm not going to. I'm just gonna leave this like on the grid perfectly because it's a really synthy sounding sound, and so I don't feel like it needs to sound human. plus it sounds synthetic with like the turntable effect I've got on it anyway, so it doesn't really need it. So I'm gonna go ahead and save the pattern, and let's consolidate it. Okay, so now I'm gonna do what I just said. I'm gonna go through and like make these sound a little bit more human. So I'm gonna take, maybe with this one I'll be a bit more different. Instead of like random, I'm gonna be a bit more deliberate. So I'm gonna take all of these like constant bells, and I'm gonna just make them all late, so that they're all hitting slightly late. And then I'm going to randomize the timing. Oh, and something I learned relatively recently. To randomize the timings, one way you can do it, and it's not exactly random, but it's close enough, is you pull up, you Alt-A, Control A to get everything, and then Alt-R, Alt-Q to pull up the quantizer, and then if you go up here where it says template, I like to do dotted eighth notes, but you can just kind of pick through these at random, and you'll get different effects. And you'll notice that as I like move this up and down, it will move those notes closer to being on the grid that I've selected. So I selected dotted eighth note. So with this all the way up, these are all going to be right on the dotted eighth note timing. Whereas with it all the way down, they're going to be where I had them originally. So if you put this somewhere in between, what it does is it kind of randomly picks some of them to move forward and back from that point. So if we click accept and then go down, we'll see that these aren't all, see this one's a little bit further back than this one, so they've been moved slightly relative to each other. And that's just it's a faster way of randomizing the timings than going through and just moving these one at a time like this in differing amounts. So okay, so let's Control A, Alt R pulls up the randomizer, like for the velocity release and all that stuff and panning. I'm gonna leave, these are the settings that I like, so I'm gonna hit accept. And then I'm going to also pan some of the notes. So I'm gonna take the 1, so these, like the down notes on the 1, the 5, the 9, and the 13, and I'm gonna pan these left and right. We could pan some of the ones in between as well, but I don't want to get too crazy with it. Okay, so let's go to the other pattern and do the same thing. So I'm going to Control A, and then Alt R pulls up the randomizer menu. You can play with these settings. And then I have everything selected. Alt Q pulls up the quantizer, and then you can pick one of these at random if you want to. I'll pick a different one this time, so dotted quarter notes. See how it changes the grid when you pick these? So it gives you different grids to kind of snap to, basically. So let's do dotted quarters, and then just kind of leave this somewhere in between. Hit accept, and then now all these notes should be moved forward and back a little bit. And then, not all of them, some of them are left unchanged. And then we can do the same thing with the panning. So let's take these notes on the 1, the 5, the 9, and the 13, and let's pan them the opposite direction. And then with this one, because I have more like stuff going on, I am gonna pan some of these other notes as well. So let's do the 3, 7, the 11, just go a little bit more like side-to-side action. Okay, let's add one more thing for the melody, and then I think that'll be it for this video. And then in the next video, I will, assuming I record it, I'll add the drums and all that stuff. So I'm going to consolidate everything together. And then we can do a couple of things. We can reverse it, chop it up, and then do all that stuff, which, let's go ahead and try that, because I haven't done that in a while. Okay, so I reversed it. Now we're going to chop it up. So let's chop it up on every bar. And then I think I am going to pitch it up an octave. Okay, so let's try speeding it up and see what it sounds like. That kind of works. I think that's better. And then I can just EQ out this like super sharp stuff, hopefully. Kind of a cool texture. That sounds cool on its own. Okay, so something like this will likely, I mean, I may change this in the final beat or whatever. But for the purposes of this video, the melody is basically done. So let's listen back to it.